Welcome back to Never Enough Novels. I rounded up the best new books coming out in February, and I have 9 books to share with you today. There is a mix of romance books, mysteries and thrillers, one fantasy that I can't wait for, and a few general fiction books by authors that I love. I'm going to put the Amazon links for all of these books down below, so if you find any that you're interested in, if you buy them through my links, it helps support this channel at no extra cost to you. And as always, hit like on this video and subscribe to see even more new book recommendations in the future. Let's dive right into my new romances. First up is Dream Girl Drama by Tessa Bailey. This gorgeous book featuring beautiful sprayed edges is still available. I think it's only like $15 right now. I am so here for this sprayed edge trend, and I will honestly buy any book that has this type of cover and sprayed edges. But this one is actually like a 5-star recommendation as well. It's technically the third book in her sports romance series. So the first one was Fangirl Down, then the Au Pair Affair, and now we've got Dream Girl Drama. But they can pretty easily be read as standalones. So the two main characters in this one are Chloe and Sig. Sig is a hockey player, so he's on the same team as the main guy from the Au Pair Affair. But Chloe and Sig meet when Sig's car breaks down outside of Chloe's like fancy country club. And they definitely sense an instant connection, and they kiss that night and definitely decide they want to meet each other again in the future. But that happens sooner than they expect because Sig is on the way to meet his dad for dinner so that he can meet his dad's new girlfriend. And when he comes to the house, who does he see but Chloe sitting in the dining room? As it turns out, Sig's dad and Chloe's mom are dating, and they have an announcement. They're now engaged. So now Chloe and Sig find themselves as step siblings. Obviously, with this new change in their relationship, they decide to keep things platonic. But Chloe is kind of ready to get out from under her mother's thumb, so she decides to move to Boston, and Sig is there to help her along the way and learn to be more independent. And as these two spend more and more time together, they can't deny that their connection is definitely more than just friends or siblings. But obviously, with the situation and the high profile of both of them, they cannot make this sort of relationship public. I loved seeing how these two opposites attracted, and they're so different, but clearly so good for each other. Sig is just the ultimate protective guy and just absolutely wants the best for Chloe. And Chloe brings out so much joy and fun into his life. And it was really interesting to see kind of how they navigated this unique situation. It's definitely more of a forbidden romance type thing, but I was rooting for them the whole way. And this is just another hit from Tessa Bailey that I highly, highly recommend. The next romance on my list is called Deep End by Ali Hazelwood, which is another author that I absolutely adore. And I have been following along with this book's journey for ages, it seems like. Ali's been dropping tidbits and hints on her Instagram for a while now, and she kind of had readers help choose the cover or the title, so I have been dying to read this book for ages. Ali is normally known for her STEMinist romances, but she is heading into the sports romance world with this book about two swimmers. Our two college athletes are on the road to the Olympics, Scarlett for competitive diving and Lucas for swimming. He's the charming golden boy, while she just keeps her head down and focuses on her craft. But a revealed secret unexpectedly brings these two together, and they decide to enter in this sort of arrangement to kind of blow off steam while they're dealing with all the pressure of trying to make the Olympic team. I don't think I've ever read a romance involving two swimmers. Plus, this has the Olympic aspect, which I absolutely adore. So this is everything that I'm looking for in a romance novel. It has so many aspects that I can't wait to get into. And the first edition has sprayed edges, which, as we just talked about, is a guaranteed buy for me. Ali Hazelwood is a go-to author, and like I said, this is her first foray into sports romance, so it'll be a little bit different for her, but I have full confidence that she's going to nail this one too. The last notable romance coming out in February is called The Charlie Method by Elle Kennedy. I realize now that I have a trend of sports romances because this is a hockey romance, so February just seems to be the season of sports and love. I just finished reading this one and absolutely adored it, so this is another 5-star recommendation. Similarly to Tessa's book, this is the third book in a series. This one is her Off-Campus Diaries series, I think. The first one was The Graham Effect and then The Dixon Rule. Now we've got The Charlie Method. But again, these are very easily read as standalones, so it mentions previous characters, but you don't have to read the previous books to enjoy this one. Our main character, Charlotte, is a stick-straight overachiever, but she's got a secret wild side. Almost no one knows about her frequent late-night hookups until she matches on an app with two fellow Breyer University students. These two boys are on the app together because they like to share, and Charlie is very intrigued by the idea of two guys worshiping her at the same time. When they finally meet in person, she realizes that the two guys are actually members of the hockey team. So there's our connection to the previous books in the series. These are two characters that we've met prior. And I absolutely loved this kind of like awkward beginning that turned into something really meaningful for everyone involved. Normally, Will and Beckett keep things strictly sexual with no feelings involved, and they are very used to their women kind of getting tired of the idea or falling for one of them and then having to break off the relationship completely. But things are very different with Charlie. None of them want to really admit it, but there are deeper feelings developing. However, this sort of relationship is not generally accepted in society, and they each have their own reasons for wanting to keep things on the down low for now. Will's father is a politician, and Charlie's family is very straight-laced, so there is no chance, it seems like, that this relationship can ever be more than something that they do kind of at night, on the weekends, without making it public. But as their feelings start to deepen, they all sort of realize that maybe they want to make this something that's actually real. This book has all of the signature characteristics that I love from Elle Kennedy. There's great spicy scenes, plenty of them in this one, as well as just really exciting banter, and I love her dialogue and how the characters interact. And Will and Beckett are two great guys, and they are clearly meeting Charlie's needs in so many different ways. I loved watching her come out of her shell and learn how to rely on someone else for once. Every book in this series has been excellent, and this one is no exception. Now let's get into my mystery and thriller recommendations. First up is A Killing Cold by Kate Alice Marshall. As you can see, this was a book of the month selection recently, and it's perfect for this time of year because it takes place at a wealthy family's isolated winter retreat. Theodora, or Theo, met Connor about 6 months ago, and they fell in love during this whirlwind romance. Now he is taking her home to meet his family at their winter retreat, but Connor is a Dalton, and this wealthy, powerful family has some secrets that they want to keep hidden. When Theo discovers a picture of herself as a child at this place, she starts to dig for answers and is wondering what's really going on here. Plus, she started to receive some threatening text messages, and she needs to know more about this situation. Theo desperately wants to know the truth, but the Daltons may be willing to go to any lengths to keep some of their secrets hidden. I'm always into this sort of thriller with an isolated retreat and a sense of danger lurking. Also, wealthy families are a great subject for these type of novels because you truly never know what lengths they will go to keep their wealth and power. This sounds like the perfect option for curling up with a blanket and devouring in a few days. My next thriller is a new-to-me author, and it's a book called Famous Last Words by Gillian McAllister. I love that the literal Amazon title says Famous Last Words, a suspenseful domestic thriller with shocking twists. Unravel the deception. Honestly, what else do you even need to know? But trust me, the actual synopsis makes this sound even more interesting. Camilla wakes up one morning to find her husband gone and a cryptic note left on his pillow. She is supposed to be dropping her infant daughter off at daycare for the first time and returning to her job as a literary agent. However, her world is upended when she gets a call about a hostage situation. As we all would probably assume, Camilla's first thought is that her husband is one of the hostages. But no, he is the gunman. Now, his note takes on a whole different meaning, and she has to decide what to do next. It sounds like we as readers are going to feel like we are right there with her in this situation and being a part of her decision making in the face of unimaginable circumstances. The last thriller on my list is by an author that I know and love, who is Lisa Unger, and the book is Close Your Eyes and Count to 10. I love that even the book title sounds chilling. It's giving me a little bit of Squid Game vibes because it's described as an extreme game of hide and seek that turns deadly. What starts as a social media stunt by well-known, popular daredevil Maverick Dillon soon turns into a deadly game of survival. Maverick has invited a number of guests to this remote island to participate in a game of hide and seek. However, a raging storm and an unexpected threat turn this game deadly. Adele is a single mother, and she's one of the participants, and she is willing to do whatever is necessary to get back to her kids alive. That alone makes this sound really intriguing, but I also noticed that there's a bit in the description about trying to figure out what is virtual and what is real. So I'm wondering, since this was originally designed as like a social media stunt, what else they're dealing with in this game. It would be interesting if they threw in some like alternate reality or virtual effects that the contestants were already going to deal with on top of like this very real threat that they're facing. All of the thrillers this month sound so incredible, and I cannot wait to dive into them. The one fantasy I want to highlight for February is called Gate to Kagoshima by Poppy Kurokai. This was sent to me by the publisher Harper Perennial, and I am so excited because it was already on my radar, and then to get an actual copy with like these beautiful sprayed edges just had me like floored. I couldn't believe when it showed up on my doorstep. But I actually talked to the author a little bit because I was originally posted this in my Instagram stories and mentioned like this is one of the best new fantasy kind of romantasy books because that's how it's described everywhere. But the author reached out and she was like, just so you know, she's like, there are not a ton of fantasy elements or magic in this one. She's like, it's more of a historical fiction with time travel involved. So I thought that was really interesting because I think she's gotten some messages from people who've already read it that have been a little frustrated at the lack of like fantasy or magic in it, which isn't her fault because the publishers or the marketing team have decided to bill this as something different than what it sounds like it actually is. I mean, I know romantasy is like a huge buzzword these days, so I'm sure publishers are trying to fit any book they can into that category. But this one still sounds really intriguing. It definitely has Outlander vibes because our main character, Isla, is in Japan trying to search for the history of her own ancestors when a typhoon comes and sends her back in time to kind of the last age of the samurais. While she's there, she gets to meet her ancestors as well as a samurai named Kai, who she falls in love with. So there's a little bit of our romance part. But now Isla has to make a decision because she knows the fate of Kai and this upcoming Satsuma rebellion, and things do not end well for them. So she's stuck in this weird position where she has to decide if she tries to change history and his fate, or if she should just find a way back to her own time period and let history play out the way it was supposed to. If you've read or watched Outlander, you can see there are definite similarities between that, but I love the idea that this has some of those same ideas in terms of the plot, but set in a completely different time and part of the world. I am dying to get into this one. I also love that it's like a normal amount of pages. I mean, with so many fantasies these days, we're looking at like 500 or 600 pages that we have to read. This is a very concise, probably well edited and well written book. So I think this one is going to be amazing. And then in the more kind of general fiction genre, first up is We All Live Here by Jojo Moyes. A huge thank you to Pamela Dorman and Viking Books for sending this my way. Honestly, there's only like a single paragraph for the description of this book, but I will read anything she writes. So let me just give you the full synopsis. So Lila Kennedy has a lot on her plate: a broken marriage, 2 wayward daughters, a house falling apart, and an elderly stepfather that's just kind of quietly moved into her house. Her career is in free fall and her love life is complicated. So when her real dad, a man who she's barely seen since he ran off to Hollywood, suddenly appears on her doorstep, it feels like the final straw for her. But it turns out even the family you thought you could never forgive might have something to teach you about love and what it actually means to be a family. So again, not a whole lot to go on there for this entire book, but Jojo Moyes just does such a good job writing about women and like the joys and the struggles that we face in our everyday lives. And this sounds like it will be right up that alley. So this is another one that I just can't wait to get into because I love the way she tells stories, and the characters that she creates are always so relatable, and she finds so many poignant moments and like heartwarming things in our everyday lives. That brings us to the final book that I'm recommending for February, which is Black Woods and Blue Sky by Eowyn Ivey. Now, Eowyn Ivey is an author who I discovered years ago because she wrote one of my still all-time favorite books, which is The Snow Child, and it's about this kind of magical girl who appears to a childless couple in Alaska, and she appears to come directly from the snow. And I've been like waiting for her to recreate that magic in another novel. In Black Woods and Blue Sky, she does return to Alaska, but this is more of a darker fairy tale. Birdie is working as a waitress in Alaska, trying to build a life for her and her daughter. And one day she meets Arthur after he brings her daughter back after getting lost in the woods. And Arthur is this kind of soft-spoken, quiet recluse who just shows up in town every once in a while. Birdie quickly falls for Arthur, and they eventually become a trio, living in Arthur's secluded cabin in the woods. It's an idyllic life at first, living off the land and far away from civilization. But Birdie eventually discovers that Arthur is more mysterious and dangerous than she could have ever imagined. This seems to have the same sort of magical realism quality as The Snow Child, but with a darker side. I'm completely hooked by this short synopsis and desperate to find out what Arthur truly is. This feels like a return to Eowyn Ivy's sweet spot, where she's weaving this tale of human nature with a little bit of magic thrown in. So I'm curious kind of where the darker piece of this goes. It also reminds me a little bit of The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna, which was also set in Alaska and featured a woman and her daughter, this time with her husband, who, are living off the land and facing that sort of task, as well as the husband who kind of slowly turns more and more dangerous, and they are faced with the decision about whether to stay with him or what to do about this situation. So I have high hopes for this one as well. All right, that wraps up my list of the best new books coming out in February. There are so many that I cannot wait to get into, and hopefully you found a few new ones that you are excited about as well. If you want to check out my list of the best books that came out in January, you can head here to watch that video, and stay tuned for even more book recommendations.